Coming to you live from the Bill Fuller Tough Studio. Boomer Esiason, Greg Giannotti. It's Boomer and Gio on the Fan. Simulcast across the country on CBS Sports Network. And wherever you are in the free Odyssey app. Good Thursday morning. What a roller coaster of emotions last night at the Garden. The Knicks, of course, do win, take this commanding 2-0 lead. But how commanding is it when you've got one guy who misses an entire quarter in Jalen Brunson, then comes back and at first doesn't look like himself, but finally regains form in the fourth quarter, and OG Anunoby, who had taken over for the Knicks when Jalen Brunson was out offensively, leaving this game with a hamstring injury, and hamstrings are one of those things you don't necessarily bounce back from that quickly, but this was as gutsy of a performance as this team has had. It was incredible in the fact that they were down and out and not playing any defense in the second quarter and then came back and did what they did and won this game comfortably at the end. But, man, I don't know how to feel this morning. I don't know how to feel. Jalen Brunson, is he going to be okay? Was it adrenaline? Did they shoot him up back there? Is his foot going to be 100%? OG Anunoby, could he be out for the rest of the playoffs? I don't know. Everything might have changed last night for this team negatively with these injuries, and we're not sure exactly if that's true or not, but they did win. They're up 2-0. That's the good part of it, but I'm confused. Good morning, Boomer. How are you?
I think we're all confused, Jay. I mean, they scored 130 points.
Yeah.
I think they had like 68 points in the second half alone, and they're dealing with all these different injuries, which is a testament to, obviously, the guts, the inner culture that, that this particular team has, and the fight and the will to win, and I don't know, just be that next man up mentality. I just that we may be finding ourselves back in February. If you remember, back in February, late January, I think it was, is when OG was out, Randall was out, Mitchell Robinson was out, and you had this collection of players that somehow played around 500 basketball.
Yeah,
and they hung in there. They hung in there, and everybody did their part, and of course, they were led by Jalen Brunson, and you could see what happens to this team when he's out. I mean, he's the definite leader. Now, I will say that Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart stepped up in so many different ways and did so many little things. It's not always about points, but it's about running the team, leading the team, and not really like just completely deflating, because they could have deflated easy.
Well, I thought that they did.
Yeah, but when Indiana went on that 11-0 run, there is no question that everybody had to catch their collective breath and say, okay, Jalen's not coming back right now, and at that point, they don't know what's going on.
It's amazing how it affected them defensively. Now, Jalen Brunson isn't the best defender on the team by a long margin or a big margin, but they were just not themselves defensively when he went out. I mean, it was like they were in this fog and thinking what was going on. Now, I know DiVincenzo said after the game that they thought he was coming back and didn't think he was going to be out for the game, but that's got to affect you emotionally and mentally, seeing him leave, and then every minute that goes by that he's not on the bench, his dad's not on the bench, and you're thinking, well, what the hell is going on? And they just lost it there. And then you see when he comes back, all of a sudden, what was it, 18 points that they scored, the Pacers in the third quarter?
Yeah.
I mean, the energy and the defensive effort was back just because Jalen Brunson was back. It's amazing.
When he came back on the court and he was out there warming up for the second half, you could feel it in the Garden. You could sense it. And they were talking about that a little bit. But, I mean, he's the heart and soul of the team. We all know that. So he has to be out there. I hope it's not any sort of like plantar fasciitis or any of that kind of crap. I hope it was just maybe a little thing that he felt, and then it went away, because I didn't see any signs of it in the second half at all. As a matter of fact, it looked like he was fine.
And this is like the world of social media and trying to figure this out. So he leaves. He got kneed in the nuts. So you're thinking, all right, what happened there? And then people were talking about how his hand looked strange. There's something wrong with his hand. And then the Chris Haynes report comes out. He's like, yeah, it's a little surprising. It's funny. It's like a little surprising. We had no idea what was wrong with him. Everyone just assumed in the 3 or 4 minutes that he wasn't there what it was, but he's a little surprising. It's his right foot. So then you see on social media the exact play right before he asked out of the game, and there's just nothing there that makes you think that he hurt his foot there. So it's not like he rolled an ankle. Nobody stepped on him. It just didn't make any sense. And they're running, for whatever reason, CBS Sports Network, the nuts thing, but that really had nothing to do with anything
right.
last night.
He was hurting there too, man.
Yeah, but
it came off the defensive zone where he was running around in the paint, and then all of a sudden he came up limping out of the blue and then took himself out of the game.
Right. Yeah.
And then went into the locker room, and that's and look, all I can tell you is that when something like that happens, your team needs to kind of set itself, reset itself, collectively get your act together. And this is where the Pacers, within 60 seconds, they went on an 11-0 run.
Yeah.
And that's the danger Pacer team. That's the team that hits the shots, that runs up and down the court. And it's really amazing when they are on. It's a fun brand of basketball to watch. But the Knicks obviously came out in the second half and shut them down in the third quarter, which was really, that's where the game, to me, ultimately was won. But I don't know. I think that we may find ourselves, because I don't think Anunoby's going to play unless it was like a minor tweak or it's a minor cramp or something that they couldn't get rid of. But if he doesn't play, we're going back to where we were in the middle of February.
Yeah, and how long doesn't he play? I would be surprised if we saw him Friday night if it is a real hamstring injury, because it has to be, because to me, if it was a cramp, they would have been able to figure it out in that amount of time. And you could tell that it's something happened to him there, and when it happened, as a guy who's pulled numerous hamstrings.
Yeah, you and OG are very
what's
similar.
going on.
That looked like you running down first base that first softball game we ever played over there, Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn.
Right, and
that's exactly what happened to you.
Exactly. So I've seen that before. I know what that's like. Hopefully, for him, it's not serious and a tear or a major strain, but it's definitely not a cramp, because he would have been back. That would have gotten him some fluids. You could just tell sort of where he gets injured, but I wouldn't expect to see him on Friday night, but maybe you get to see him in a Game 4 if it's not so bad and he could be himself. But if this were John Carlos Stanton, you wouldn't see him for 6 months. But I don't know if it's going to be something that serious.
I can't believe you say.
Well, it's true.
Come on, the Yankees are winning, man.
No, I know. But last night there was a moment where I had like a real legit throwback fan issue, like where I call it an issue because, I don't want to get angry really watching these games anymore, because it's just why am I getting angry and frustrated? This is sports. Things are good. We just chill out. But when the Pacer bench, when they were going on this run and took that lead and were up 10 with Jalen Brunson out, when those guys on the bench were turning around and mocking the Knicks fans like they were some hot shot team that came into the Garden and pushed them around, when the MVP of this team, and quite possibly, I know Jokic won it yesterday, but quite possibly the most important player to any team in the NBA is out, you go on that run and you're talking trash, screw you. So the fact that they came back and he came back and they lost, I was incensed by that. I was like, who do you guys think you are? You're that special, that the best player on the team by the best player that the Knicks have seen since the 70s, probably?
If you were going to tell me that the Pacers were going to score 117 and 121 points in consecutive games, I would have told you that's their recipe for winning. However, the New York Knicks, who actually can score with them, come on. 130 points, 121 points. Our Knick team, the team that we saw coming through Philadelphia, the team that was coming into the playoffs, what were we talking about? Defense. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Brunson was going to get his 40 points, and they were going to hold the opposing team to under 100 points, and that's how they were going to win.
Right.
The offensive rebounds, the defensive rebounds, the key defensive plays when the game is on the line. Now, I know Rick Carlisle is pissed off.
Yeah.
He is ticked off, and part of me understands what he's doing. I think part of his public nature of how he's going about this is to take some of the pressure off of his players.
Yeah, I also think he's trying to influence the officials just like every other basketball coach tries to do. You see it a lot in college. You see it in the NBA. They'll complain about the officials. They'll take the fines. They'll take the heat. And then they're hoping that him screaming about it and it becoming a storyline that the officials then swing it the other way in the future games. I do believe that he was legitimately pissed off, but I mean, to sit there and say that the small market team doesn't get the calls and the officials want the big market team to move on is just, for a guy who's been coaching forever and has the respect of a lot of people, is weak. It's really, really weak. And you could blame Rick Carlisle about 10 times more than you could blame the officials for last night's loss if you're a Pacers fan, because everybody in America that's watching this game last night, except for Rick Carlisle, thought that T.J. McConnell should have been in the game late in the fourth quarter. So Jalen Brunson, who's going toe-to-toe in this lightweight match with T.J. McConnell, and that's the most emotional I'd seen Jalen Brunson in a long time, with that N1 with McConnell, and he's talking to the bench, and he's talking to McConnell, and there's what's going on, McConnell back and forth, he's screaming, he gets an N1, and then you take him out, and then you get Halliburton back on him, and then Jalen Brunson just starts scoring again. And then they left Halliburton in on him for the rest of the...
Well, this is the NBA, and this is one of your leaders on your team. But
it doesn't mean that they can't both be out on the court, and then you put McConnell back on him. So, like, everybody who's watching this game on X is saying that, and then all of a sudden, the broadcast starts saying it too. Like, where is McConnell? McConnell's the only guy that slowed down Brunson. So the point being, and I'm glad McConnell was on the bench, trust me, but the point being is that Rick Carlisle is going to sit there and complain about the officiating. That's the reason why they lost the game, when meanwhile you don't even know how to use your own players. So stop. Just stop acting like a baby. And if the NBA wanted the Knicks to be good, they would have fixed the draft one of these years.
Yes.
They never, ever, ever move up in the draft from their lottery position. They either stay there or they go down. So if the NBA wanted to help the Knicks out, they would have fixed the lottery for them. The Knicks are better than the Indiana Pacers, and they had their opportunities last night. I mean, think about it. OG Anunoby didn't play the entire fourth quarter. Jalen Brunson didn't play the entire second quarter. And they scored 130 points and won the game. And it's the officials? Stop it. Play some defense if you're the Pacers.
That's true. Well, they're the Pacers because they want to set the pace. And the Knicks, oddly enough and weirdly enough, are playing that same pace.
Yeah, which I didn't love in game one, but it ended up working out for them last night. I just felt like, slow it down, don't fall into their game, but they were able to keep up with them amazingly enough.
The other weird thing is watching the Pacers play full court defense.
Yeah.
It's a weird deal, and I think what Rick Carlisle's thinking is, let's see if we can get these guys exhausted, so when we do get to the fourth quarter, we'll be able to make the plays.
But that doesn't happen. So which
is crazy.
So this is this conversation that goes on, and there's no way to see who's right about it. So obviously the Knicks, Mitchell Robinson is now out again, but I don't think that's because he played too much. I just think he's always hurt. So. But
it's Joel Embiid's fault.
Well, that too. But also, with the Tibbs conversation about the too many minutes. So there's both sides of this. Now, did Jalen Brunson hurt his foot because he's playing too much? I don't know. I mean, if he has a couple more minutes on the bench in the first round or this couple of games, does he not hurt his foot? I have no idea. But, oh, by the way, he better be in that game, because you see what happens when he's not in the game. All right, OG Anunoby, is he hurt because he played so much? I mean, he was out for an extended period in the regular season, doesn't have as many miles on him as Josh Hart and some of these other guys and Jalen Brunson. So I don't know if he hurt his...
And by the way, when he got hurt, he had only played his 28th minute.
Right.
It wasn't like he was out there for 42 or 44 minutes or 48 minutes like Josh Hart is out there every game. And DiVincenzo played 44 minutes last night.
Yes. So, I mean, so the people that'll say, well, these guys are going down because of the Tibbs thing, well, I'll also say that in these fourth quarters, the Knicks, because they play so hard and those guys are in there, they've been doing this the entire year, are just blowing past the other team because they're used to it. And it's almost like they built up this stamina throughout the year in the way that they're playing this, that Tibbs has been playing this team, that they have an advantage in the fourth quarter. So, I mean, I know everybody wants to kill Tibbs and wants to say that these guys are going down because of him. Prove it to me. And you can't. You can't prove it to me.
Well, you can't, but the one thing you can say is that there is a kind of a next man up mentality that the team does have. Now, depending on Anunoby, and it looks like I can't imagine that he's going to play Friday night, but if he does, great. But if he doesn't, Precious Achiuwa is now going to be the starter.
Yeah.
And, Precious last night, he had his moments. I thought that early on in the game, I felt like he couldn't find any sort of rhythm. I felt like he was a little bit tired, a little bit exhausted, hadn't played a lot of minutes. Okay, you're welcome. He hadn't really ever, hasn't played like in 10 days this amount of minutes and at this intensity. Like, you can practice all you want. You can, there were these articles about the Rangers about how hard they're practicing and the intensity is there in practice, but you can't in any way, shape, or form mimic exactly what's going on in a playoff game in front of 19,000 people. You just can't. And I felt like there were times last night where he looked like he was tired and he was out of position on defense. But at the end of the day, when you needed an offensive rebound, you needed a putback, you needed a key defensive play, especially late in the game, he made those plays.
He did, and the offensive rebounds absolutely was a big deal in the fourth quarter for him, but he cannot, when he gets more minutes, which we assume he's going to because OG coming back in a couple of days with a hamstring is unlikely, he's got to be a lot better because he was. So OG goes out, Siakam just starts beasting him with that little turnaround in the paint, and he's just like boom, boom, boom.
And by the way, if you remember Game 1, Siakam was doing that to no matter who was covering him.
But still,
I mean,
it was stark here. And then also he was lost. There was wide open 3-pointers. It was his guy. He couldn't catch up. Stan Van Gundy called him out for not defending the pick and roll properly. He was in stretches last night. He was bad defensively.
All I'm going to tell you is because he hasn't played.
Well, now we know why.
Right?
Listen,
I don't want to get into
some people get exposed when they get more minutes.
I am not going to argue with you, but some people also, it takes time to get yourself ramped back up and get into the system and get into playing again. I mean, at the end of the day, in the fourth quarter, he made some key plays. And that's, in these NBA games, that's what it all comes down to. You get less than 5 minutes in these games that are tightly contested. Who's turning the ball over, who's making the shot, who's getting the offensive rebound, that kind of thing.
Well, we can agree with this. If he gets more minutes, he's got to be more consistent defensively.
I will say 100% yes.
And we'll just leave it at that.
But again, I wasn't expecting him at the beginning of all of this when I was pointing out that I believe that he needs to have some skin in the game. I wasn't saying that he needs to play 30 minutes a game. What I was saying is, you give him 7 to 8 minutes a half if he can, and that is to rest some of the guys. So maybe a guy like Mitchell Robinson doesn't get hurt. I don't know. That's all I was talking about, and I think it's always a good thing that for a guy who did play a very big role from the end of January to the beginning of March, where your team was able to stay afloat with him as a starter and averaging about 36 minutes a game. You would like to think that he'd get some run early on in these playoffs, and he got none.
Yeah, well, he's got a shot now, so we'll see what we think. I mean, I would be just absolutely floored if Anunoby were back and even close to 100% with a muscle pull like that.
Did you think about what did you think about Carlisle's ejection?
Well, I mean, we kind of talked about him already, but he went over the top. He went nuts. He got the technical foul, then he took it too far, got ejected with about a minute and a half to go, whatever it was, and then went off in the postgame. So, I think that he is doing this for a couple of reasons. One, I think he's legitimately pissed, and two, I think that he wants to influence the officials going forward to get some more calls because he feels like it's that unbalanced. Now, one thing that Jerry played during the warm-up show that I listened to that I'm sure he'll play at some point during the morning was T.J. McConnell just basically disagreed with him publicly at the podium and said, yeah, that's all well and good, but that's not the way we feel in the locker room. We got to be better. So that was telling.
That's being a professional. I think the coach is trying to play mind games, and the team understands that they're getting beat by a team that is half of itself. I mean, when you think about, really honestly, with Mitchell Robinson, Julius Randle, now OG Anunoby all out, I mean, you would think that the Pacers would just absolutely pounce on this team.
Yeah.
But guys like Josh Hart, DiVincenzo, now Achiuwa is going to be in the mix here.
Hartenstein,
too, is another one.
I mean, he was amazing last night. He almost had a triple-double. All right, Boomer and Gio on the Fan and CBS Sports Network. Jerry joins us just a couple of minutes after this big Knicks win last night.